Welcome to the thrilling world of Security Squawk, where we explore cybersecurity. Guiding you through online threats, we'll aid you in understanding safety protocols and trends. Meet our gurus, Bryan from Exact IT, Reginald from Arc Solvers, and Randy from Tech Rescue. Together, we'll delve into current events and hot cybersecurity topics, helping you comprehend their impact. Stay informed, stay secure. Security Squawk, the business of cybersecurity. Buckle up, let's dive in.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Security Squawk podcast, the business of cybersecurity. I'm Bryan Hornung here with Randy, Bryan, and Reginald Andre. As always, welcome to the show, guys. What's happening this week?
All good. Traveling. I think we were all in Texas last week, so that was pretty
right,
cool.
Man. Experiencing the heat. I heard so many people complain about the heat. I'm like, man, it's the middle of August.
I did not mind it at all.
I know. I thought it felt great, but you know,
your 104 is nothing like my 104. And
yeah, it's humidity.
What's really awesome for me is being in that 104 and then coming home to 75 in Philly, and I was like, oh my God, this is so nice. It was like being in air conditioning. So,
man, when there's 100,
so big story this week on AI being used to attack critical infrastructure. I'm going to get into that. Randy, you're going to break down how a phone call beat $1 trillion firm, and Andre closes us out with another hit on a children's hospital burned by a vendor software. So let's get into it with my story, guys, here with this August 19th, federal agencies from the NSA, CISA, and FBI. I always bring these joint advisories to the show because or I highlight them to people, right? Because these are important, right? And I'm going to stop there because these agencies, these three-letter agencies, do release bulletins and information. But when they do it collectively, that's our way of our government kind of telling whoever they're speaking to, this is a big problem. You want to pay attention to it, right? It's not... They're not doing this just to do it because, hey, we're paying taxes and this is what we're paying them to do. I mean, if the NSA comes out with their own advisory and there's no other agencies on top of it, well, I wouldn't take that with a grain of salt, but I'm just trying to give you some perspective on the level of urgencies around these joint advisories, right? So not only did you have the typical three, CISA, FBI, and NSA guys, you also had the Department of Energy and the EPA join them in this warning. And what the warning stated was that hackers are using AI to build tools that attack Siemens industrial controllers. So they know that they can hack or target a specific controller, which is a piece of hardware that controls some kind of system. It could be HVAC, could be electrical, inside of large companies, our own critical infrastructure. And guys, these are like little small computers, right? Little controllers that maybe open up a valve or let a chemical come in or, things like that, right? And these are the little computers that control this stuff. So, we get safe electricity, safe water, all the stuff that we rely on in our day-to-day. And these little devices, they run water plants, they run factories, power systems. And here's how they're doing it because this really changes the game, guys, right? So it's not a new software flaw, right? They're taking AI, they're having AI write custom attack code in real time as it discovers these vulnerabilities, right? So they've been scanning the internet for years with tools like Census, ZoomEye, and they look for exposed controllers with vulnerabilities that they can hit, right? So why this matters and why these agencies said, hey, we better get together and let people know this is going on. It's because these AI tools are able to adjust and pivot on the fly, which humans were really never able to do quickly, right? They might find something. Number one, the AI is just finding the vulnerabilities way faster, right? So humans were never going to find these vulnerabilities more than likely. And then the second piece is turning around the attack on that vulnerability, right? So, the three of us, we've gone hard into AI, right? And I'm just going to give you kind of my own experience with AI. And I'm a software developer by trade, right? That's what I went to school for. That was my first job out of college. When AI came along and I started playing around with these coding tools, my mind was blown, right? And as a software developer, when you can kind of see the light where something takes minutes or hours to build that would normally take you months, right? And I'm talking 3, 4, 6 months, and AI is doing this stuff in hours. Imagine if you apply that to what's going on here, right? So you can train the AI to find the vulnerability and say, hey, if you find the vulnerability, then I want you to figure out how to exploit it. I want to bring you guys in. Like, typically, if a human was doing exactly what I just laid out, that could be like I said with my software development experience, that could be something that's 3, 6, 12 months for some human to figure out how to turn this vulnerability into an exploit. Now we're seeing it done in minutes and in almost real time. Any thoughts around that, guys?
Oh yeah. Go ahead. You can go first, Andre.
None of us talked about this article, but I'm sure, I don't know if you guys saw, it happened a day ago where Iranian hackers shut down the UK power plant. If you guys saw that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was actually going to bring that one I was actually going to bring that one to the show this week because it was such a big deal, I thought. And then I kind of saw it was like this small little outfit. And then this thing popped up and I was like, yeah, that's what I'm going to talk about.
Yeah.
So, go ahead. Why don't you tell people like what was going on in the UK before we go too deep into?
And I want to chime in after him, Brian.
Go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. So basically it was a shutdown of this water plant. So again, like you talked about, there could be, it could have been the hacks where, for example, when the pump reaches a certain level, stop, right? Or if the pressure becomes unsafe, alert or whatever the case is. So this happened back in July. It wasn't, like you said, it was a small power plant, but they just released this information. But this ties directly back to what this report is, what your article is talking about, where you have these systems that are online. It's easy for them to now scan the internet for these type of Siemens devices and say, okay, let's look for these type of, utility industrial type of equipment. And then now let's use AI to find known vulnerabilities, or maybe it's just so old, it's just a matter of a script to get in.
The crazy thing, Andre and Brian, y'all probably remember this, but back in 2010, 16 years ago, a worm was discovered called Stuxnet. And what Stuxnet did was it transferred from USB to USB device, and it targeted specifically the controllers for uranium plants. And where they were trying for that to go by getting on every single USB device it could was to literally target the controllers, because Iran used at the time Siemens controllers to control their uranium plant. So when I saw this article today, I mean, it makes perfect sense because most likely the AI could look at code from Stuxnet, just pull it off the internet now, because I think that was one of the things that was released in one of these Snowden things or something like that. That it was originated from us targeting Iran. But at the end of the day, AI could pull that off and most likely on the fly figure out ways to do it. And we talk about this from time to time because of geopolitics and stuff that's going on. Literal hot war right now going on between USA and Iran. And maybe we've not declared war, but they're at war with us and they consider it war. So any stops there may have been before have all been pulled, which that shouldn't surprise anybody. And anytime an Iranian state actor or somebody aligned with them does some kind of cybercrime, they're just learning for something like this so they can pull out a big attack later. So this is pretty crazy, and it matters a lot more, and it's going to matter more and more as we go forward, because we're talking, like you said, the water plants, the power plants, and things like that, that are critical infrastructure. So it's a really big deal.
And just to, reiterate something too, all of these water plant, utility companies have to do is just inventory their devices to see if this specific Siemens S7 PLC, if they have it, then they need to either update the firmware or make changes on the network so they don't indirectly go onto the internet. Maybe you still need them in an enclosed network for communication, but there are ways you can do that. So the point is, this is if in 2-3 months from now we're talking about a U.S. water supply company being hacked or having some type of ransom or whatever the case is, this was preventable because they're telling them exactly what they need to do.
Except, so what if, just thinking out loud, what if the good guys use a laptop to program the controllers that they also use to check their emails? You know what I mean?
All right.
And then they take a page out of the book of Stuxnet and just say, let's just get on as many computers as we can, and then ping for that controller, or wait for the technician to hook up to the controller. I'm just thinking out loud here. Like that would be a route, and that's what Stuxnet did. Stuxnet just basically propagated itself everywhere it could, for using USB sticks and the like. So I don't know, man. Hopefully that's good, but then you got to look at how are you programming your controllers, and maybe they're not connected to the internet, but are you using a machine that could have been compromised to plug into them and connect to them?
Yeah. So there's a couple other scary details here that I want to kind of highlight. The method of attack is a little crazy because the very language that these controllers are used and built on is literally the same language, which is known as Python, is the same language that AI is really good at coding as well, right? So this is the software that engineers that run these places that build these things and put them in place and configure them. It's the same language that they use to talk to the controllers, right? And there's no antivirus here, so there's nothing to catch. That's the other part, right? So the tool itself, what I'm talking about here, the Python code, if you know what you're doing, you can have AI rewrite the controller's instructions. As Andre said, that'll allow the hacker to do things like open a valve, or allow pressure to run higher than it should, or run or shut off a pump.
Yep.
That's all stuff that this stuff can do. So it's like AI is almost like, I'm starting to see that AI is literally removing the need for hacker grade malware to do what they've been trying to do for the last 25 years, right? The first, the attackers are using AI to write attack code, guys, and they're scanning the internet, and the 5 agencies giving this advisory, they're telling everyone that this capability is here. It's here now. It's real, and it's active, and it's not theoretical. Like, that's the big takeaway that I took when I read this thing. It's like, oh man, like this is no joke. Like, people are, doing. And the other thing that was scary to me, and it was such a little piece in there, but they basically said, like, the days of needing to be like super technical, knowing what you're doing, are over, right? One low-skill actor using an AI coding assistant to breach 17 organizations in a month is literally what the government has witnessed and why they put this advisory out. That is fact. They're looking at low-skilled people using AI coding assistants, and they watched them breach 17 of these critical infrastructure organizations on these Siemens controllers. 17. So like, you don't need to learn this shit no more. You can just learn how to tell AI to do this stuff. And here we go.
Yep.
It also brings up the final thought that I'm going to have here, and I'll let you go. But it also brings up the scary part of this, which is, guys, we saw this. We saw so much happen over our time doing cybersecurity for businesses, talking on this show about the fact that the rules, the laws that our government has in place. How many times have we talked about on the Security Squawk podcast, like the laws just haven't caught up with what the hackers are doing or what's actually going on out there? And that's still true today, right? And now we're going to layer in this technology with that. Folks, if you can build software faster, if you can write your blogs faster, if you can get a contract faster, everything else is going to get faster too. Just be aware, good and bad.
So speaking of laws, I know a few months ago we did something on the show that talked about, I don't know if the law passed or it's trying to go up the chain to pass, but any critical device that has some type of network access, there had to be basically no end of life as far as updates and so forth like that. I could see why a company would not want to do that, but this is a good example of always having, these type of critical things for national security, where it should always get updates no matter how old it is or whatever the case is. And last thing, there was another article, but not really for this show, but it talked about how cars relying on technology, and in 10, 15 years, just like you have an Apple phone, after a certain amount of years, Apple no longer wants to do updates for those phones. So now just imagine 10 years from now, if Tesla says, you know what, the very first model Tesla, whatever it was, we no longer want to do updates for it. However, it still connects to the internet, and now there's vulnerabilities in people's cars.
Guarantee you that's coming. I don't know if it'll be Tesla, but there will be a car manufacturer who has an issue.
Yeah, because I mean, if the car manufacturer had some kind of subscription, then I could see the manufacturer keeping it up to date. But like with a phone, they've already made their $72 off the phone, or $300 or whatever it is they make, and they don't want to keep supporting that thing forever and ever and ever and ever, because they're not making any money off of it. But yeah, so we got vibe coding CEOs, and now we got vibe coding hackers. And I wouldn't be surprised, this is probably controversial, I won't name any names, but there's probably some of those open source LLMs that are available out there that are quite good. There's probably some open source LLMs that the bad guys have figured out how to make them into bad GPTs, if you will.
Yeah, I'm just going to rant a little bit more before I move over to Mr. Randy. But
I got my coffee.
Coming out of an AI conference where a lot of people were upset because they didn't get to learn how to use and deploy these tools like almost immediately, right? And we talked a lot about mindset around AI, how you need to be aware of what this tool is and rolling it out properly and not making mistakes, right? People have to understand that in this warning, so a lot of there are quite a few cybersecurity companies who've already put out advisories of their own piggybacking on this. And a lot of them are all saying the same thing, guys, like what I just said. As AI gets better understanding all of this stuff and these technologies in particular, we've always said on this show, it's not if, but when, right? And business owners have played chicken with that for 20 years, a lot of them. I hope you're starting to understand that as AI gets better at understanding this stuff, that the expertise and barrier to becoming a hacker will keep falling. And attacks on your business, attacks on critical infrastructure are only going to increase if we don't understand A, how to roll out agents properly, and B, how to secure this stuff so we're not talking about this stuff on the security squawk for the next 10 years.
You're right.
So, all right, guys, I appreciate your insight on that one. Randy, I want to slide over to you. My God, Apollo Global Management. So you're going to tell us who they are and why this is important. When I saw it, I was like, oh, man. So they're a global management firm, but they own a ton. I don't know if you're going to talk about kind of who they own and what they own. But they're a Wall Street investment giant. They have massive amounts of money, trillions of dollars under management. And they just disclosed that attackers talked their way into some cloud systems that they were a part of and walked out with a bunch of data. So Randy, take us through this one.
Yeah. So this is Apollo, a very large financial firm, like you mentioned, trillion dollars under management. And so we've mentioned on our show in the last couple of months, we talked about this group called UNC 6671 and how they were doing these phishing attacks. They were targeting financial firms. So we're not sure if this is related, but here's the thing. Google came out towards the end of May, actually. So what is that, 2 months ago? Google came out where they had found, their researchers had found, they found money that had been sent to UNC. So evidence of ongoing attacks. They found these giant networks of, not giant, but they found a substantial 50 to 100 these websites that were related to getting people onto SSO and passkeys. Websites like portalpasskey.com. I mean, that sounds like a pretty great website, right? Doesn't sound bad. Passkeyhelpdesk.com, passkey portal, my secure passkey, passkey deploy. So these guys are taking and building these really large, if you will, like these complex little networks of websites. And here's the crazy thing, $1 trillion company. And at the end of the day, it was a phone call from a fake IT person. So a phone call from a fake IT person, and they call up and they call you on your mobile and they're like, don't you want to be secure? We have something that we need to do that's super secure. You always hear everybody talking about how you got to get passkeys and, MFA and all that jazz. And we just want to walk you through that. And then what they do is they take them over the phone. They take them to this website, and one of the websites was specifically made to look like Apollo, which is why we're just putting 2 and 2 together here. We'll find out more as this comes out. Their release to the state of California just went out on Friday. It said the attack started back in June. So we're very early in the news cycle here. But anyway, so they get this phone call and they get people to sign in. And by the way, they take them to this website that's like Apollo branded. Like I said, they already knew that back in May. So that probably caught Apollo, probably started, moving towards a resolution even before then, but we don't know. But then they take you to this website, the Apollo logo pops up, and they're like, okay, you see the website, go ahead and log in. And then when it does, I want you to, push add passkey or whatever. And then they set up a passkey. And while they're doing it, the bad guys are stealing everything. So they get off the phone. They're like, thank you so much. Thanks for keeping Apollo secure. Have a great day. And you go about your Saturday or whatever it was, thinking you did a good deed. Well, anyway, the bad guys were able to use that. So doesn't matter if they had zero trust application control, company-wide. Doesn't matter if every single part of their business, was had EDR on it, segmentation. I don't know about that part because they were able to get to some data. And then, all the things that they probably had in place it all was able to be worked around by a phone call to a key person. And then they were able to get in, and then they were able to steal data from there. And so this is a thing that we've been talking about, and we're seeing it more and more and more. We're talking it's a month and a half from when it happened to the notification. This is a really big deal. And anyway, it's something that we've really got to be prepared for out here in the world. And I think these guys were involved with the Ring Central one as well. I'm not 100% sure on that. And they did steal, and I'll close with this: names, date of birth, contact info, home addresses, and social security numbers that we know of so far.
For Ring Central? Or for the
no, from Apollo. But I'm saying I think this was the same attack that Ring Central fell for. It appears that it was.
Yeah. So a couple of things, right? I was digging around on this one, and I found out that, and this is the stuff that the three of us have been worrying about on this podcast for a long time, right? And this is one of those boogeyman things that we talk about on this show, where we say, hey, these hackers, they're getting in, they're stealing data, and it doesn't seem like any of these businesses care because nothing seems to really happen with that data once it gets stolen other than class action lawsuits. And I've been sitting there saying, yo, I got a team of people who watch the dark web and monitor what goes on in hacking forums and stuff. And I'm going to tell you right now, these guys are in the dark web trading this information, selling it to one another, compiling databases, and building databases and profiles on people. This is happening. And this is proof that it's happening because the attackers caught employees in this attack on their personal cell phones, pretending to be IT. Personal cell phones. Where did they get that information from? They correlated it with information on the dark web. 100%. Right? This person's name, matched it up, found a phone number, boom, called you on your phone number. Why did they do that? Well, one of two reasons. The person's either going to have one or two reactions to that. Why is this person calling me on my cell phone? Or they're going to be like, oh, well, yeah, my work has my cell phone number. So, yeah, they're probably calling me on this because the IT company could be like, our phone system's down. So we're calling you on this number. And we need you to do, this is an emergency, like do it. And that's how this stuff goes down.
I think we need to, Microsoft and Google authenticators may need to add some type of message, a pop-up that says, IT will never call you for, MFA code or something.
I think that needs to be in your security awareness training.
No, absolutely. But no, absolutely. But what I'm just saying is, like, right now I was looking at my Microsoft Authenticator, and just like how, because we are training our clients, to be careful for email phishing and things like that. But maybe just something on the Microsoft Authenticator that once you open it, just a little pop-up that just reminds that person, because like Randy says, it's that Saturday, you're at the pool or the beach or whatever, and you just need that just a reminder that, wait, before I do this, let me just think about it one more time.
It's going to be a phone call. It's not even going to come across on your app.
No, I'm saying though is like they had to, they when they were putting in the MFA code to do the final bypass, that authenticator app would have like another pop-up or reminder just to remind the person, hey, are you sure, this MFA code that you're going to give is for the right reasons?
Yeah, I mean, that's not a bad idea for all. It is actually, now that I understand what you're saying, like, yeah, just a reminder, like, hey, you're to type this into somewhere, not give it to somebody else, type of thing, right? Because that's kind of what's happening here, right? They're looking at the code going, oh, my code's this, and giving it to somebody, when really you're entering that somewhere. Like, that's the only way you should be using these tools. The minute you give that code to somebody else, you're compromised.
Yeah.
Well, and even taking it a step further, when one of the things they're doing is getting that person to set up a passkey. So a passkey, you can wipe passwords, you can kick all devices out. There's a ton of stuff you can do. And if you don't get rid of all MFA when you're like remediating a hacked account, if you don't get rid of all MFA, the passkey could still be on the bad guy's thing. And as soon as you reset the password and all that and unblock the account, the bad guys can hop back in with that passkey. So it's even more egregious than just MFA because they don't have to have the username and password to make it happen. And it executes in a high trust environment because it's a passkey.
Any class action lawsuits yet?
Sure, they're lining up right now.
Minutes after the disclosure on August 12th, lawsuits were filed.
Wow.
Google's been warning about this same hacking group for a long time, guys. They've actually been out there saying, like, look, they're targeting private equity, financial sector firms, and they don't care what size you are. Now, they got a big fish here on this one. But if you're a small financial firm and you don't think that you fall under the same target as Apollo, I got news for you. They've hit a lot more smaller organizations than they've hit large. So these attackers, the more important thing that financial advisors, financial planners, anybody in private equity needs to hear right now is that these guys are running a proven script that has worked over and over on your industry. So making you smaller doesn't make you less of a target. It makes you the easier phone call.
Yep.
Any last words here, boys? All right, we're moving on. Andre, SickKids. When you brought this to the show, I was like, oh my God, we already talked about this like 3 years ago. But here we are again. Hey, more examples of like, hey, if you're a company, you're big, you're probably, if you don't do things right, you're probably going to get hit again. Being dubbed as one of the most respected children's hospital in the world, located in Toronto, Canada. This breach didn't touch a single patient record, but leaked employee and job applicant data, I think, is what's on the line here.
Yep.
Tell us how it happened, Andre. What's going on over at Children's SickKids Hospital?
Well, although we're talking about SickKids, it is actually not their fault, but their fault, because it's their fault because they hired the software vendor, but it's not really their fault because it's not necessarily SickKids system that got hacked, but the third-party career website type of, that got hacked. So you apply to a job. It asks you for all of your personal information because you're dealing with children. It probably, just to weed out, the crazy people, it may even ask you for your social security number just to make sure that before anybody looks at your resume, they make sure that, you've passed a background check and so forth like that. So we see that we have name, email address, phone numbers, and social security numbers or their version of social security numbers. And all of that information is now with the bad guys, that I like to say, are threat actors or hackers. My 2 cents on this is, why hasn't SickKids publicly identified who this software vendor is? Because again, right now, SickKid is getting all the headlines. But if I was SickKids, I'll be like, wait, yes, it's us, but it's really these guys over here that we have to blame. So, but I know that's kind of tossing the problem to somebody else. But nevertheless, I would want to be like hand in hand with my vendor and be like, yeah, SickKids, but this is the software vendor that got affected. Second thing is, how far back is this information? If I applied for SickKids and I didn't even pass the first step in going through the hiring process, I hope if I applied more than a year ago, SickKids or this, through the third party has already purged my information. People move, people's phone number changes, email addresses, whatever may change as well. And even now, if you notify me that my data was compromised, I may not even get it because I applied for you a long time ago and I never heard back and I moved on. So versus a current employee where it's going to be easier to communicate with them. So that's kind of the gist of what happened. Take it away.
This is wild. I actually went back and looked at our show notes, and this is actually the third time SickKids has been breached. Back in December 2022, we covered it on the show here. They got hit by Lockbit ransomware. And if you guys remember, that was the case where the gang actually apologized and handed over a free decryptor. And then they got swept into the MoveIt vulnerability breach in 2023, a year later. Now it's a third piece of software. And the other interesting thing that I found as I was checking things out is in the healthcare industry, guys, half, almost 50% of all breaches in that industry are coming through a supplier, not through the hospital or healthcare organization's own front door. So that's a pretty big number move, because usually they're getting hit direct, and now they're not.
Yeah. And oh, sorry, Randy, go ahead.
No, it's just one little thought that the thing we talked about last time and this seems to be almost outside of their secure systems. This is a third party. The topic we talked about last was through a phone call. There's a lot more we have to talk about, or a lot more we have to take care of when we're securing our stuff than just our literal actual stuff. So anyway.
Yeah, we know the theme for 2026 has definitely been third party breach or third party. Make sure you're looking at this stuff now, guys, because the hackers have pivoted. They've moved on, right? They know that doing things the old way, trying to bust down the front door, break in some way. The two biggest things we're seeing right now are third party breaches and your employees getting tricked on a phone call.
Yeah. Another point I'm seeing is if this was, this third party career website, how come we haven't seen other ones yet, right? Because we've seen it with the school, I think Power something they were called, where it was just tons and tons of just
Power schools, I think it was.
Yeah, Power schools. Yeah. So SickKid is the only one who apparently was affected on this, but I would have thought that other hospitals or people that use this career website, they would have also been disclosing things at the same time.
I feel like this is a to be continued story. SickKids may have been the first ones to come out and say something.
Mm-hmm.
They're the only ones.
Yeah.
So interesting. Yeah. I mean, here we are, where we have another breach at this company, and we just had a breach at New York City Health and Hospitals that hit 1.8 million, right? And as Andre pointed out when he was talking, right, don't keep data around longer than you need it, right? And that is what one of the things that we're finding out early on with this breach is that, like, as Andre pointed out, there's people in this data set who never even worked at this organization. They just applied there. And it appears that some of them may have applied more than 5 years ago. And they're still sitting in this data set.
Right.
Right. So you can't really blame the vendor for the vendor having data that really shouldn't be there. Right. So we can't really go, oh, well, it was the third party. But what were you storing in that third party? Should it have all been there? That's the point I'm trying to make, right? So
after 9 years,
piece of software or anything can turn one vendor into a massive breach that these guys can take advantage of. So the flip side of that is these hospitals need to be looking at the data that's inside there, right? And I know it's not fun to clean up data. It's like when I ran Exact IT and the MSP, that's one of the biggest things that we had our customers have a hard time doing is like, hey, you got a lot of data over here. We're looking at the last time some of this stuff has been modified and it's been over 5 years. We can't go in and clean that up for you. We don't know your data. So we need you to start working on a process to clean this up. I don't know. What's your experience, guys? I'm going to say almost to 100% of our companies, like the pain on their face when you tell them it's time to clean up data, it's like, pulling teeth to get them to
Yeah.
do it. I don't know if you share a similar
No,
experience.
same.
But
Yeah.
And it doesn't help that, like in this, obviously everything is, or most things are in the cloud now. And Microsoft recently allowed the 50 gig mailbox, which was the standard. Now it's 100 gig mailbox. So before we would tell our clients like, oh, you have to archive, or let's set up a policy. Do you really need, things after X amount of years? But now Microsoft is saying 100 gigs. So, hey, the data's there, the storage is there. Why can't I use it?
I remember we had a client who had every single email he ever received. And I'm going to say we stopped working with this company maybe like 4 or 5 years ago. But they had, up until that point, they had every email they ever received since 1999. And the owner's like, he was so afraid to delete something or move something away permanently because he's like, I don't know if I'll ever need that in the future for like a lawsuit or something. And it's like, well, there's things called statute of limitations for a reason, right? So you got to understand that stuff and look at it. In 2021, you don't need an email from 1999. So, all right, guys, is that it? Wrapping it up?
That's it.
All right, cool. I'm going to wrap it up here. Appreciate your inputs, guys, as always. Always bringing good insight and perspective to the show. And across all 3 of our topics this week, folks, nobody broke through a well-defended company's front door, right? And my topic, AI wrote the tools, low-level hackers. Now they're hacking critical infrastructure, which, up until this point, folks, critical infrastructure hacks were usually considered very sophisticated. And you're starting to see the word sophisticated be removed from a lot of these stories, a lot of these bulletins. So just be aware of that. So a phone call, we saw a phone call full people, as we've been talking about a lot in 2026, and a third-party vendor bug that opened the door for hackers, which is another theme that we've been talking about here a lot in 2026. So the big takeaway from this week is what used to keep hackers out now lets them in. So if you enjoyed the show, please head over to securitysquawk.com. Check out how you can follow us, how you can interact with us, how you can support us over there. And if this helped you, please share it out, right? Help other business owners, other people find this content. That's what you do. You don't inflate our ego by doing that stuff. We just put this out there for the good of it. And if you comment, you like and subscribe, you're just helping the rest of the world out there get this content. And we do appreciate that. So thanks to Randy and Andre as always. And we'll see everyone next week. Stay safe.
Take care.
Bye, everybody.